Good evening, folks, and welcome this evening to the 4th of 11 Monday night winter learning series webinars presented by the Missouri River Bird Observatory in partnership with the Missouri Birding Society and the Conservation Federation of Missouri. My name is Dana Ripper, and also here with me this evening is Ethan Duke. We are the co-founders and directors of the Missouri River Bird Observatory. Our mission is the conservation of birds and really all wildlife and their habitats via science, education, and advocacy. When we were founded in 2010, MIRBO focused largely on science and education, but we learned that advocating for positive, beneficial conservation policy is one of the most important things that we can do. So therefore, we wanted to present to you tonight a webinar on conservation advocacy here in Missouri, and I am delighted to introduce our friends, Zach and Kyna. A little bit about them. Zach Morris is the lead biologist for Mitico, a Missouri-based environmental services company specializing in stream and wetland mitigation under the Clean Water Act. He is also the current president of the Conservation Federation of Missouri, also known as CFM. Through his advocacy work at CFM and on-the-ground knowledge of regulatory programs, Zach brings a wealth of knowledge on conservation-related policy in Missouri and beyond. A Missouri native, Zach studied wildlife biology at Missouri State and has a master's degree in fisheries and wildlife science and management from the University of Missouri. When he's not working to save wetlands or volunteering at CFM, Zach is usually out fishing with his partner Mary or duck hunting with dogs Orion and Artemis. Kyna Iman is CFM's government relations specialist. She has been solving public policy challenges for businesses, trade associations, and nonprofits since 1993. She develops tailored strategies and solutions for clients and then shepherds them through the sometimes daunting political, legislative, and regulatory arenas where public policy becomes law. Kyna produces real results by establishing priorities and developing comprehensive strategies to achieve legislative goals. She also works to enhance public understanding and appreciation of what government does and how it operates. And I want to read a quote from Kyna's website from Thomas Jefferson. "We in America do not have government by the majority. We have government by the majority who participate." So without further ado, please take it away, Zach and Kyna.
Great. Thank you, Dana, for that introduction. It's great to be here this evening. I see the participant list keeps going up, so welcome in, everybody. We're glad you took some time out of your evening to learn a little bit about conservation policy in Missouri. This slideshow here was put together by Kyna for some of the advocacy work that we do with the Conservation Federation. But I'm going to start by giving a little bit of background about our organization and about conservation in Missouri. CFM, our mission is to ensure the conservation of Missouri's wildlife and natural resources and preservation of our state's rich outdoor heritage through advocacy, education, and partnerships. And we try to act as the voice for Missouri outdoors. So advocacy, education, and partnerships, if you'd like to learn more, I'll throw a plug in at the end. But today we're going to talk about advocacy a little bit. And for that, we need to establish a little bit of history. Missouri's Conservation Commission is somewhat unique in the country, and we were the first apolitical conservation commission in the country. In fact, that's why the Conservation Federation of Missouri was founded, was to do something when our wildlife numbers were in crisis. There were less than 1,000 deer in the state, and some concerned citizens got together in Columbia and said, we want to do something. We think that people with knowledge about wildlife management should be managing wildlife instead of politicians and elected officials. And so ever since 1936, thanks to a vote of the people to enshrine those powers in the Constitution, our Conservation Commission has had authority to manage fish, forests, and wildlife in Missouri. The governor gets to appoint those commissioners. There's 4 of them, and they serve 6-year terms. And those commissioners are then confirmed by the Senate. So that's one of the examples of checks and balances that are in place to make sure that everything works smoothly as intended. And as I already mentioned, that authority to regulate fish and wildlife is in the Constitution. And so they have the authority to enact regulations, to buy and protect land or restore land, and other ways to carry out their mission of conservation in Missouri. Which means that the legislature, the elected officials that are in Jefferson City making laws right now, they don't have the authority to regulate wildlife. But they can enact related laws that relate to maybe how those laws are carried out, or to other parts of state law that might affect wildlife or their use. And they can propose constitutional changes, such as, any sort of constitutional amendment can be proposed either by citizens through initiative petition, which is how the commission was initially established into the Constitution. Was a group of people got together, wrote that amendment, got enough signatures to get it on the ballot, and then it was passed in a statewide vote. But sometimes it's easier for the legislature to go through all that work of drafting a proposed change like that than it is for citizens. And so that's one of the ways that they can propose changes to some of those authorities that are in the Constitution already. I will pass it off to Kyna a little bit to give you an overview of the legislature, how they work from day to day, and some of the process that helps a bill become a law.
Okay, thanks, Zach. So yeah, I'm the lobbyist, as some people say, for Conservation Federation. It's not a bad word, but I am in Jefferson City Monday through Thursday, January through May, while the legislature is in session. And right now, since the elections in November, this is the breakup in the House and the Senate. There's 163 House members, which is the second largest House of Representatives in the entire United States. I think we're second behind New Hampshire. And after the elections, there's 112 Republicans and 51 Democrats from across the state. And it takes 82 votes to pass a bill in the House, which would be the simple majority. In the Senate, there's 34 Senate members, and which is made up of 24 Republicans and 10 Democrats statewide. And a simple majority in the Senate would be 18 votes. And right now, our governor and the House and Senate are both Republican majority led. And there's another rule in the Senate that would, it's kind of an unwritten rule that one member of the Senate can actually filibuster a bill and kill an entire bill. So you may have 196 members that actually support your cause, but if you have one senator that's willing to stand up and talk for days, they can kill a bill. It's very unique in Missouri. I don't think many other legislators have that filibuster kind of agreement. So it makes the makeup in the Missouri legislature a very interesting one. So like Zach was saying, I know a lot of people are very interested in conservation, but it's like, what does the legislative process have to do with me, or why should I get involved? Well, I'm sure you've seen where one vote can change an election. And we actually had an issue in the Conservation Committee, House Committee last year that we lost by one vote in committee against a bill that would have changed the makeup of the Conservation Commission. It would have, instead of the governor appointing the Conservation Commission, it would have put 8 people on the commission. It would double the size, and each person would have been elected at large from each congressional district. And so that's an issue that continues to crop up at the Capitol that CFM has a resolution on and plays defense on, and works against that. We were able to kill it, from going forward in the House, but we did lose that vote 11-10. So that's why we need advocates like you to create a more friendly environment for conservation and those outdoor issues. And so it's just trying to get you involved and get you to understand how these advocacy efforts can help through different resolutions that CFM puts together. I'm not going to go into this, how a bill becomes law. We can talk offline, or you can look up the old Schoolhouse Rock has a great video on that. I'm a bill. I'm only a bill. But as far as the appropriation process go, the House bills, actually budget bills, start in the House and go through this process. And I was lucky today to sit in the House Appropriations Committee for the Department of Conservation's budget. Sarah Parker Polly presented to the committee, which is almost all new members, a lot of freshman legislators that have not seen conservation's budget before. And so that's one of the things that I keep an eye on for you guys. It was interesting. I thought a couple of the takeaways, Director Pauly said that 1 out of every 4 tourism dollars that comes into the state comes from outdoor resources and conservation. So, and that's not just, she said there's 1 million anglers that have fishing permits. There's 600,000 hunting permits they issue annually, but there's at least over 700,000 wildlife watchers and outdoor enthusiasts. So just presenting that along with their $215 million budget to the state, and educating these legislators that they employ over 1,800 people, I think was, just an eye opener to a lot of those folks that don't understand how big the Department of Conservation is in the state. So.
Great. And as you can see from this slide, there's a lot of steps in the process where we can sort of insert ourselves and advocate, which is what we're getting ready to talk about. But Kyna mentioned the committee hearings. We're fortunate this year to have a couple of really champions really for conservation that are going to be the chair and vice chair of the House Natural Resources Committee. So that's going to be a great opportunity for us to engage with our important issues and make sure we can get work done where we need to. So how do we shape that process? And that's through advocacy. Well, we were going to take turns going back and forth with some advocacy tips and talk a little bit more about the process. But first, internally within CFM, how do we set our priorities? Well, we were founded to, well, we read our mission earlier, but essentially at the time when we were founded, we wanted to make sure that politics stayed out of conservation and that folks who know how to manage fish and wildlife have the authority and the funding to be able to do so. And so those are really top priorities for us all the time. Is anytime a bill comes up that would take away or sunset the conservation sales tax, that's something we watch out for and we always oppose very strongly. Anytime folks want to play around with the commission structure, we've got a system in place that works really well. That's really been a model for many other states in the country. And so we want to protect that because it continues to work the way it's designed. But there's lots of other related issues that can pop up in the legislature. We talk a lot about conservation when it comes to wildlife, fish, forest, and wildlife that I mentioned. That's the bit that's in the Constitution for the Conservation Commission. But conservation is a lot more than that. It includes water quality, clean air, sustainable energy, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all issues that may pop up in different committees in the legislature and different committees within CFM. We have several committees that are called our resource advisory committees, and it brings together experts and concerned citizens within our organization that are passionate about a certain topic. So take, for example, environment and ecology. Where that relates to a lot of things from solid waste disposal, clean water, air quality, and clean energy. And so those folks get together once a year or anytime that an issue rises up that might require CFM to weigh in on through our resolution process. Our convention is coming up next month, where all of our membership has a chance to get together and talk about these issues. And we're going to vote on a series of resolutions that came up through those resource advisory committees this year. And those that pass will set a policy stance on a particular issue. CFM supports X topic or opposes X bill, something like that. And that's how we set our policy for where do we send Kyna to go out and advocate, where do we send our staff to go testify on a bill, or et cetera, et cetera. We also use resolutions to advise agencies that we think they should take a particular action that may not be related to legislature. Maybe to encourage the Conservation Department to rethink a regulation, or to encourage another state department to plant native plants on their properties, things like that. So that's sort of one way that we really involve our members at the grassroots level into our advocacy, is they tell us what's important for us to go comment on. We get a chance to debate those thoroughly, make sure all the grammar and formatting is right before those go out and become our official stance on a particular idea. And that informs the way we advocate. And advocacy is not a bad word. It's your right as a citizen. Government is supposed to represent you and serve you in a way. And whenever we do workshops, I always ask people first, do you know who your elected officials are? Who's your state rep and state senator? Chances are you probably know who your US rep and US senator are. But sometimes we forget how important those folks that are local in our own communities are. And really, they may have a bigger effect on your day-to-day life than you think. And so that's question number one, is do you know who your state rep is? The question number two is, do they know who you are? Because they should. Whereas our senators represent, our US senator is representing close to 6 million Missourians. We've got a kind of, 163 representatives in the state.
Right.
That's a much smaller subset of that population. And again, they don't have the same high profile to be bombarded with communication all the time. So if you call them or email them, they're going to know who you are and they're going to know what's important. And that's a really important part of advocacy, is informing your elected officials how you think they ought to vote on a particular issue. And really, when it comes to conservation or any topic that you're passionate about, you might be more knowledgeable about that issue than the folks that are elected to enact those laws. Nobody's an expert in every field. And so they depend on people to reach out and tell them what's important to their constituents to vote in a particular way. This is a great picture also from one of our conservation success stories from the last few years, where, if you're not familiar, we have a Share the Harvest program where hunters can donate venison to food banks around the state. We distribute somewhere around 1 million servings of protein through that program every year. And we recently expanded the bill to include shelf-stable products like jerky and snack sticks. And for the pilot program, those snack sticks are getting distributed through the food bank's buddy pack program. So those are actually going home with school kids in their backpacks for food insecure families. I think around 25,000 families get to participate in that program. I'll let Kyna touch a little bit on how simple it can be sometimes to make such a big change like that and get something real cool done.
Yeah, so that was the first bill I advocated for CFM on, and happy to get that across the finish line. But sometimes it's not big, complicated legislation. For example, that shelf-stable bill just required changing the word "and," where it had to be frozen and shelf-stable packaged, to "or," that it could be frozen or shelf-stable, which allowed us to do the jerky and the meat sticks, like Zach said. So you never know what the legislation is going to look like, but it can be just something that simple that we need your help on. So yeah, we're going to roll through these, how to effectively advocate. I would say a lot of this is just common knowledge or common sense, which I always joke, there is no common sense in politics, seems like. But if you take away anything on this slide, I think the main thing is to have a specific ask and know what you're asking for. Because you can go in and talk to your legislators all day. They'll tell you, oh, I love to hunt, or I love to fish. Yeah, I think conservation is great. Or state parks, we hike, we get out, we bird watch. But until you say, will you vote yes on House Bill, whatever, and really ask them and outline what you want them to support. I can't tell you how many people walk out of the Capitol and they're like, oh yeah, kind of, they love our issue. And I go, but did they tell you they'd vote for it? And they're like, Well, I didn't really ask him that. So make sure you don't forget to have a specific ask and know what you're asking them, and then follow up with them and remain in contact so they don't, it's not one and done. A lot of people just come up for their advocacy day and then never talk to their legislator for the rest of the year. And you won't build that relationship that Zach's talking about if you do that. So
It's important to be informed too. If you're in the district of a legislator who's who you're asking to support or oppose something, or if you're in the district of a legislator who's on a committee on a particular issue, then it matters a lot more if you reach out to them than if just other folks around the state reach out to those committee members. It can be helpful to check out their website, learn more about them. They may have public meetings or town halls that you can attend and meet them face to face. But if they've received awards, congratulate them on that. It's a great conversation opener, but also a way to recognize the hard work that they've done and the recognition that they've already received from others. We give out conservation awards to legislators typically every year that help us to pass our issues or oppose some of the attacks. We're really thankful for those folks. And so when our members can recognize that, again, it just hammers home how important that work is to us and to the folks in their district. You can also look at what bills they've introduced or introduced in the past to know what issues really matter enough to them to want to work on and continue, continue carrying forward in future years if they didn't pass. And look at what committees they serve on, because again, that's an additional opportunity, another point in the process where they're going to be able to influence legislation and vote yay or nay on a certain issue, even if that's not one that they're sponsoring. If it comes before that committee, they can help to reach out if that's an issue that's important to you. And then what do we have to do to get our legislation passed and win? Ultimately it comes down to you got to get we saw the slide earlier. I think it's 18 votes in the Senate, and I'm not going to list off the numbers. You need a certain number of votes, but you also need to keep that one person from shutting it down. Whether that's any step in the process can get delayed a little bit further is a bit of a problem. So it's important to be informed of what those steps are in the process and ask, am I asking you to vote on this on the floor or in committee? Or is it held up now because it's not getting referred to the floor for a vote? Maybe I should ask my legislator to go talk to the Speaker of the House and say, hey, ask the Speaker, why aren't we voting on this issue? This is important to my constituents, and get it moving that way.
Yeah. So once again, this is more common sense when to talk to your legislator. Definitely whenever CFM sends out an action alert, which is usually before a committee hearing or before we have an important vote coming up in the House or the Senate. And Zach's going to talk a little later about our Legislative Action Center and how you can get signed up for that. And then just while legislation's being drafted in the interim, I know a lot of people think, oh, I just come up and talk to my legislator when they're at the Capitol. But most of my work is done between May and December when we're drafting legislation and really working through that process. And that's a good time when they're home in your district and you may run into them at the grocery store or whatever. And so there's some more slides to come on that.
So when do you not talk to your legislator? When they're minding their own business, really. If you run into them in public, they're out eating with their family, they're at church, they're playing Little League with their kids. They're not thinking about work. You wouldn't want your boss to come bother you when you were sitting down for dinner with your family or at the movies or at church or whatever. So, don't go bother them and demanding their time and attention when they're thinking about other things. Just use common sense, again, like Kyna already mentioned, and be respectful of their time. Legislature is not a full-time job in Missouri, and so they might have other businesses and other obligations to worry about. And so, call their office during office hours, send them an email and try to set up a meeting. Look at their website for town halls, or if they're attending an event, they publicize that might be a good chance to go make your voice heard. But if you run into them out in public, chances are if you bother them about a particular issue, it's going to leave a bad impression. at the very least not be helpful and could possibly hurt you too if you give off a bad impression of that issue or the folks that are supporting it.
Yeah. So you are the expert. Regardless of what the issue, do your homework, but just remember that these legislators are up there trying to consume over 2,000 bills that have been filed, and they can't know everything about everything. Some of them might tell you they know everything about everything, but in reality, you are the expert. So don't forget that. Don't let them intimidate you. And don't underestimate the members and the staff. They are so, so important. That's how I get my foot in the door. I know the staff. I've worked with them for years. You know what? They're going to be there long after the legislators are gone. So making that relationship with some of the staff members is just as important as making it with your legislators. Like I said, you know what's going on in outdoor resources. They're going to lean on you, just like Zach said. Do you know who your legislator is? But you've arrived when a bill comes up relating to something in conservation, and they actually pick up the phone and call you and ask for your opinion or your input. And so that really helps them kind of know how to vote. And that means you have arrived and you're the expert on the issue.
And practice makes perfect. Make sure you know, again, you are the expert, like Kyna just said, but make sure you understand the issue beyond just the particulars of the conservation side of it, but also the policy. What does this mean if it were to be enacted and functionally in the government? Because that may be the perspective that they're approaching it from. And it's important to understand context of where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, of how the policy changes work out when they're enacted. Make notes to yourself when you make a phone call. A lot of times when we send out action alerts, we will send talking points or a summary of the issue to help inform your call. It's almost like a call script from a telemarketer, although hopefully a little bit more personal. But really, you want to hit a few key points, maybe hit them a couple of times and stick to the facts and make sure that it's accurate and informed. And if they ask you a follow-up question that you don't know the answer to, it's okay to say, oh, I don't know. I can get back to you on that. And you really don't want to make up an answer. That's how you can create these situations where you accidentally get caught in a lie, or you provide conflicting information from another supporter, and that can spiral out of control pretty quickly. It's totally okay to just say, I'm not sure. I can look that up for you, get back to you if you'd like, or to refer to somebody that might have the answer, or just if it's an off-topic question, just get back to the point. It's like, oh, I'm not sure about all that. However, I know that the core issue here is this, and I support that, or I oppose that. Right? Just stick to the facts, stick to the script if you have your notes stuck in front of you.
So some great ways to just reach out and talk to your legislators is you can write a letter. I'm still kind of old school. I think a lot of legislators are. They really read personal letters. They don't like form letters. You can make a call. You can make a call to the Capitol. As a matter of fact, you can call 573-751-2000. And that will get you the Capitol switchboard. And sometimes when you ask for your legislator, they'll answer the phone. If you're really good friends with them or feel comfortable, you can text them. A lot of people text now. And so that's why making that relationship outside of session and kind of getting their contacts in your phone are very helpful. And then there's nothing that can beat a face-to-face meeting when meeting with folks. And then CFM's Legislative Action Center is so easy to use, and we're going to go over that at the end on how you can get signed up for that.
We will show you exactly how to do that. And again, this kind of goes along with sticking to the script. Be clear in what you're communicating and what you're asking, especially if you have an ask. Make sure to make the ask. Ask, are you going to support this bill? Or are you going to talk to the speaker to make sure that this bill gets referred? Or can I count on you to vote against this? We think it's really bad for conservation. Be concise. You don't need to ramble on. Personal anecdotes can be helpful sometimes to provide context, but you don't need 5 stories to drive the point home. Make sure you just stick to what you're asking and be consistent. Don't contradict yourself. This really comes back to being informed. Make sure you've got the right facts and you're making the right ask, and leave it at that. They're busy, especially during session, and if you do have the chance to talk to them, be respectful of their time. So just by being clear with what it is you're asking of them, and not droning on and on, especially with unrelated stories or anecdotes or bills that you're not there to discuss.
Okay, I think a lot of this, at first, shortness of time. Do we want to roll through some of these, Zach? Because I think we're starting to get some questions. I think the biggest thing is right now with Facebook, websites, it is ridiculous if you won't spend like 5 minutes to get to know who your legislator is and reach out to them. They're everywhere. They're, like we said earlier, you can tell they're on a conservation committee. And we also watch Senator Senator Bain now, his ag, outdoor resources and food production is the Senate committee we watch, and House Conservation and Natural Resources Committee in the House are 2 you want to watch out for. If you look on the House or Senate websites, and I think we have those at the end, but I can put those in the chat.
And I want to highlight here, it says offer to serve as a resource for conservation issues. If you call or email, especially if you leave a message on the phone, leave a callback number and encourage them, like kind of mentioned earlier, to reach out to you if they have questions on a particular topic. Because again, that's kind of the end goal is they know you're a really informed and passionate citizen, they might call you up when the bill comes up and ask for your opinion or for you to help explain it to them. And once you do have that relationship established, stay in touch. That's part of that, leaving a callback number, but send thank you notes and then call them and say thank you and give them credit for what they've done. Whether if you have an organization you're with and you can recommend them for an award or something like that, if they really helped out on an issue, that's great. Shout them out on social media, whatever it is you can do to sort of give some recognition and appreciation for their work. That really stands out. It shows how important the issue is to you and to other folks in their district.
So there's a question in the chat I am going to answer real quick. We had a question on if we lobby on behalf of DNR legislation. And yes, right now we are lobbying on behalf of clean water permit fees to be extended and hazardous waste fees and clean air fees. Last year, we opposed the sale of the 11 Point River State Park, which is under State Parks is under Department of Natural Resources. So yes, we do a lot of those issues as well. So
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the state park issue. State parks are hugely important to Missouri and to a lot of our members. That's an area where we're engaged pretty often. And for a very basic civics lesson, we've mostly been focused on 2 branches of government tonight: the executive branch, which is the Conservation Commission and its department, and the governor, and the legislature, the legislative branch is that they're making the laws. But we recently got good news about a court case regarding the 11 Point River State Park, where the state is not going to be ordered to sell that property off. And so that's the judicial branch. It's the 3rd branch that it's harder to advocate with because they're more concerned about legal interpretations than they are about your opinion. But we still engage with some lawyers to draft some briefs for that and make sure that the people of Missouri were well represented there. And we were very happy to get the news that we're going to get to keep that state park. So I'll leave this slide up for just a second if you want to copy down Kyna or Tyler's email. Tyler's our executive director. and our website for the Legislative Action Center. I am going to pull that up here shortly and show you exactly how you can sign up for it. There's a lot of resources out there. We're not just here to plug our own organization, but Conservation Federation is a federation of over 100 different organizations. And so we cover a real breadth of topics on there, and chances are we're tuned into most conservation related issues that might be important to the folks watching here. So that's a great first step to go and see what's going on there. If you do sign up, you might get action alerts from us when really important issues come to a vote to ask you to go call or send an email or possibly show up in person to testify on something. So let me get ready to pull that up. So this is our Legislative Action Center. Over here on the right in this menu.
Pardon me, Zach, could you magnify that just a little bit for folks?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. So right here where it says sign up is where I've clicked, and I've already pre-filled this with my name and the Conservation Federation address. You go and put in all the required information with the red dot, your name, address, and email. There's some additional information you can include if you so choose. We're not going to use this to market you, but if you sign up for this, you'll get those alerts about advocacy that's coming up. If you happen to know a legislator and have a relationship with them and you're willing to engage with them further on conservation issues, we'd love to know that. Make sure you click this box if you want to receive future action alerts. And then when you click submit form, then you're signed up. And now I can go home here and I see a list of recent conservation related bills.
There's the bill I was talking about, that's Senate Bill 395 on the fees extension.
You can click on the bill for a little bit more information, and it tells you a topic to which it was related. It tells you where it is in the process, who's involved. Senator Bernstetter is a former award winner from us, so a big friend to conservation. And as this continues on, you'll see more actions that are listed. But if we go back home and, oh, go ahead, Kyna.
No, the other nice thing I was going to say, whenever we do a call to action, what's really nice about this program is that we can put what committee members are on the committee that we're trying to lobby or advocate for. So because like I said, there's 197 legislators. We don't need to be talking to all of them at the same time. But those 15 members of the House committee, if they're going to take a vote, those are the people I need you talking to at a certain time. So this Legislative Action Center will figure that all out. And then what's really cool for me is I can see who's responding. So Dana and Ethan may say, yeah, I called my legislator. And then I can walk into Tim Taylor's office or now Curtis Gregory and say, hey, did you hear from Ethan and Dana on this issue? And they're like, no, I haven't talked to them. Or I could just go to the Legislative Action Center and look and see if you responded or if we had anybody actually reach out to certain members of that committee. And that is so helpful to me when I'm following up with legislators, and I know who you are, so don't think you can run. But it is a huge bonus and help whenever we're reaching out to those certain committee members.
Yeah, it's really useful to be able to go in and say, look, we've had, this many hundred people sign up to send a letter. This is really important to a lot of folks. You saw there, I just typed in the address and zip code for the CFM office in Jeff City, and we find a list of our federal, state, and local elected officials. And if we wanted to contact Representative Griffith, then we can click their phone number, address, all of that. So hopefully this is a useful tool for you all to use there. I'm going to stop screen sharing here so we can answer some questions. I think we've got a few.
That can kind of, there were towards the beginning a couple of questions that were related to each other. So I'm going to kind of read them both. We have an attendee from Illinois that says, I'm curious as to why you have a superior DNR than we have in Illinois. Other agencies have qualified folks, but our DNR just gets unqualified appointments. And then, sort of relatedly, Edge is asking about why the current system, like with the government appointed conservation commission, and how that works, to keep our commission less affected by party politics or, other craziness. So just could you talk a little bit more about how our, I guess, both, Conservation Commission, Department of Conservation, and also DNR, like how that process works and why our agencies are quite effective?
So DNR doesn't really have a commission. There are commissions for the Clean Water Commission, Clean Air, but the department is, there is no commission that oversees Department of Natural Resources like there is the Conservation Commission. So I don't know how we stack up against Illinois. I know that the governor, it is a huge political ask from people that want to be on the Conservation Commission. It's a very sought after commission to serve on. And with there only being 4 members, a lot of times those appointments are, pretty well vetted within the governor's office. And then they also have to be approved by the Senate. They have to be confirmed by the Senate members.
Why would it be so detrimental for our commission structure to be changed? You both kind of briefly mentioned that there are attempts to change that and that we conservationists oppose that. So can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so as you know, there are some people that don't like conservation. I mean, we fight anti-conservation bills all the time, especially in the House. We have a much more favorable Senate than we have had in the past. But for example, the feral hog issue was very controversial in Southeast Missouri. A lot of people do not agree with how those hogs are trying to be eradicated. Also, the chronic wasting disease and the deer issue, farm-raised deer, was quite controversial. And then just members of Lake PETA, if we allow people to just run for a conservation commission, you could have, maybe Farm Bureau members of the hog hunters, all running for those positions. And I don't know if that would be the best thing for the Department of Conservation. I think those appointed offices need to be more well vetted than just somebody that has a lot of money and can run. And then their agenda becomes the state's agenda, and that's not always good.
Yeah, really the idea is we're being 1 or 2 steps removed from the politics of the situation, where obviously there's politics involved to some degree with any decision made by an elected official, but really the governor wants to have an effective government. So he or she will appoint folks that are going to be effective at leading a particular agency. The Constitution does require, there's a vague requirement for knowledge and familiarity with conservation issues. And then obviously there's a mandate in the Constitution for the commission to carry out those duties. I'll also acknowledge that back to the first question about the Illinois DNR, in a lot of states, their Fish and Wildlife Agency is the same as their regulatory agency for air and water quality and environmental quality. In Missouri, we have 2 different agencies. So some states don't have a separate department for fish, forest, and wildlife, hunting, fishing, recreation, like we do here in Missouri. So that's one of the reasons why we're so good at it. Really, we think we have the best conservation agency in the country, is because that aspect of it was sort of removed from the politics with the independent commission appointed by the governor. some of the checks that are in place to make sure that that doesn't become political. No more than 2 of those 4 commissioners can be from the same political party. And then it does have to be confirmed by the Senate. And so that's just another layer removed from the money that comes into politics, because like kind of alluded to, if those positions were elected, especially local elections, statewide elections don't get the same attention as national elections. Somebody could come in and buy the seat and be a dissenter. And even if that didn't happen, if folks are trying to represent their particular district and trying to get reelected, they may not be focused on what's good for every Missourian that engages in those resources. Especially, I drive across multiple districts to go hunt and fish around the state, and so I want those folks making the decision based on what's best for the resource and the people that are using it, and not just for the folks that are local in a particular area.
And there are administrative rules, checks and balances. The Department of Conservation, any new rules that they publish has to be put on the Secretary of State's website, and the public has 30 days to comment on those proposed rules. And if the legislature and they get a number of, rule comments back that they don't like those rules, they have to go back and revisit that rule before it can become published and can be set in the state regulations. So there are some other checks and balances in the system.
Looks like there's a question in the chat related to the same topic. Last time I checked, Governor Parson had appointed 2 Republican and 2 independent department conservation commissioners instead of the required representatives from both parties in Missouri. Is this a variance or a concern?
So again, the constitutional language is that no 2 may be from the same political party, whereas an independent is not in the same party as a Republican or a Democrat. In today's political climate, it's unlikely that a governor would appoint a commissioner from the other side of the aisle, so to speak, which is you might view that as unfortunate. However, I think our commission continues to really carry out its mandate, that the folks that are on there are very interested and passionate users of our conservation resources, and I certainly don't view that as an impediment to their ability to carry out the mandate in the Constitution.
And Michael asked about the initiative petitions. You must have been reading our mind, Michael. We were talking about before the webinar started. This is going to be a big issue this session. 2 bills were voted out of the House Rules Committee today. This would change how the initiative petition process works in Missouri. It's one of the priorities of the speakers. I don't think CFM, we do not have a resolution on that. Is that correct, Zach?
Correct.
On those bills. However, we are watching them. It's kind of a double-edged sword. It could either work for us or it could work against us. And I think in the past, we like the current process. On initiative petitions, you collect signatures, you get it on the ballot, it passes by a simple majority. One of the bills would require a 60% majority of votes in every congressional district, or no, 60% majority instead of 50%. That's one of the joint resolutions. The other one would require a majority in at least half of the House districts. And you saw that would be 82 districts across the state. I'm sure that's intended so there's a rural urban mixture of where those bills are passed or where those ballot initiatives are passed. But I don't think in real life that really helps what they're trying to do, which is to limit the number of initiative petitions that are put on the ballot. So yeah, that's going to be a big issue to kind of keep your eye on. I mean, it would prohibit people from going after our sales tax if it was harder to get ballots to put on, which could help us. But also, if we ever wanted to go back and change the sales tax or change the makeup of the commission, it would be harder for us to put an initiative petition on the ballot.
Yeah, it's sort of a double-edged sword, I think, for any group that's advocating for something, where we've had great success stories in Missouri precisely because of the initiative petition process. That's where the independent commission came from. We haven't even talked about the sales tax. Missouri has a 1/8 of 1 cent conservation sales tax. So that's one of the reasons we're so effective is we have dedicated funding in the Constitution. That's not subject to the whims of anybody's election cycle. Similarly, our Department of Natural Resources is more effective because we also have a park soil and water sales tax. Half of that money goes towards soil and water conservation, helping out farmers and landowners to do conservation work on their land. And half of that money funds our state park system. We have some of the best state parks in the country, and they're free. It's because of that sales tax. Those are both issues that CFM was behind the initiative petition decades ago now, and continues to uphold. So on the one hand, we've had great success before with with initiative petitions barely passing that turned into huge success stories decades later. On the other hand, if somebody wanted to undo that work that we've fought for decades to keep in the Constitution, it'd be great if that was harder, right? So we're kind of monitoring the issue right now, but certainly it'll be a topic of a lot of discussion this year.
Zach and Kyna, we just have a few minutes left, and I had a question actually. Kyna, you spoke about drafting legislation on one of your slides that both of you had. There was when to talk to your legislator during the drafting of legislation instead of, when things are really moving and getting very tense. So can you talk a little bit about drafting legislation outside of session particularly, and like who and what influences that and how that's done?
So one of my favorite stories is about drafting the prescribed burn legislation that would allow, more people to be able to do those prescribed burns and get insurance coverage for it. And so when we were drafting that legislation, we had a lot of different input from different groups, including like the Cattlemen's Association, who originally thought we were going to burn their barns down and be out, not be liable for that, when in fact it's exactly the opposite. But you do bring a lot of parties to the table in that initial drafting. And then the other thing is finding the right sponsor. And that's where it helps to know who the legislators are and kind of what their background is. And that's where I reached out to your former state rep, Tim Taylor, just from getting to know him through his bio, that he was a former firefighter and also now has cattle that he raised. So it was like a perfect fit, trying to kind of put pieces of the puzzle together. And so it's just starting that conversation with your legislator or, with your association that you're involved with, is what are some issues that we can help you with? And, maybe it's just interpreting what's already currently on the books that people don't realize, and finding someone through House Research that can help us draft stuff like that. So does that kind of answer your question?
I would like to do just one last little plug for the Conservation Federation. I know from the outset, I get feedback from people thinking it's just a hunting and fishing organization, and that's not so. It's got a much broader umbrella than that. So don't let misperceptions guide you on that decision to get involved. And also, if you have some angst about things in the conservation community and the environment, it's a great thing to stay informed with and to participate with to help alleviate that and help you understand the processes and the issues and how best to tackle them. And personally, after being involved for 10 or 12 years with CFM, I still stand by them and still love being involved and doing everything I can to help move the ball forward for the conservation of our resources in the state.
Yeah, I always like to say, Ethan, at the board meetings at CFM, you've got a great product to sell. who doesn't want to go spend time outdoors with, so take your legislators out, take their kids or, for a hike, or get them out to some of the state parks, or take them duck hunting or fishing. Just show them firsthand what you're doing in the field. I mean, you guys doing your, bird banding and getting them out and inviting them, I think is huge to get them to understand how important your jobs are, how important it is to advocate.
I think we should be the most successful. I'm going to use the term interest group, even though I don't believe that conservation is a special interest group. I think we ought to be the most successful one, because conservation matters to everybody, and conservation is relevant to every issue. And so that's why I don't think we're a special interest group, is because I think in every policy solution to all the obstacles that we're faced with today, conservation can be part of the answer and should be. Ethan, appreciates your comments. In fact, in our last magazine, I wrote an article titled "More Than Hunting and Fishing." It's a huge part of our core, but there's so much more than that comes into play in conservation in Missouri. And there's a place for everybody and every topic, really, at the table. So we hope to continue to strengthen that voice and to just continue to bring that voice to the Capitol and make sure that the folks that are making those decisions understand the importance of conservation to the people of this state and to the future of this state.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
All right.
Appreciate you being
That
here
was
tonight.
wonderful. Thanks, friends. Thanks to everyone that joined us this evening.